Welcome to another video. I'm Oni Onyabor and we're with Pro-Lit-Fic, here to tell you about the number one question you need to ask before starting your book. Now, if you're an author and you've decided, I want to start a book, I'm going to have this amazing story and this incredible universe or this world I want to put out, or maybe you just have something nonfiction, maybe you want to write a memoir, or you just want to tell your story, whatever story it is you want to tell, this is the number one question you need to ask yourself before starting. And it's pretty simple. I'm not going to hold it back. But if you don't answer this question while you are going through the process of writing your book, you will encounter troubles, tribulations, trials, struggles, and you will not know how to navigate them. You will lose your way on your long path because you have not asked yourself this question and because you did not answer this question. And so it is super important. And we're going to talk about what that question is, what are the common pitfalls with it, and so that when your issues arise, you will know what you need to do along your journey. So the number one question you need to ask before starting your book is pretty simple. Why am I writing? That might sound pretty simple. And you'll say, oh, well, what do you mean? I just like the book because it's a really cool book. And then I want you to ask this question again until you start getting to bedrock. So ask it again. Why? So for instance, if you're like, why do I like this story? It makes me feel good. Why does it make me feel good? Because it's got really interesting elements that I find entertaining and I think it would be cool for other people to see that. Why do I think it would be cool for other people to see that? The reason you ask yourself these questions is so that you're really getting down to the core motivation as to why you're writing, as well as to the most compelling aspect of your book. And when you can really boil this down and take it down throughout your whole process, it'll make it when you discuss it, when you write it, it'll be your North Star through your process. But if you don't ask yourself these questions, you'll be forced to ask them while you're writing it, but then you'll already be inundated with all these details and you'll be having all these issues come from all over the place and you're going to struggle. So there are three big issues that if you do this, you are going to have completely taken care of. Because oftentimes, a lot of writers will write from a place of misalignment. And when you write from a place of misalignment, the reason you're doing that is you're oftentimes using your writing to compensate for something, and it's not coming out in the purest, best way it can. And so here are the three big issues. Once again, these aren't wrong, right? There's nothing wrong with them, but it's understanding that these are the three principal motivations typically why people write. When you get down to it, it's going to usually be number one is validation. So validation means that simply, I just want people to tell me how great and how awesome I am. And if you're writing with this, typically, if you're going for validation and you just want people to tell you how good a writer you are, the reason this can be a pitfall is because you will be resistant to things like feedback, as well as the best course of action for supporting your story. Or even in a nonfiction story, this can be very difficult because oftentimes we feel like we have a stronger command of our own story, especially if it's autobiographical. But when we're telling and sharing that story, we have to recognize that there's a reader on the other end of it. And there are times when someone might be more experienced, even though we might be more intimate with the experience. A good example, if you kind of want to understand, is say you are sick and you're like, oh, my tummy hurts, or I have a headache, or, you got something going on. Now, usually, even though you're more acquainted with your body, you wouldn't necessarily say, unless you have classical training, that you know more than a doctor. Because even though a doctor doesn't know you specifically as much as you might know yourself, a doctor understands the nature of your body and the nature of your biology better than you do, typically. I don't know who you are on the other hand. Maybe you're a genius. I don't know. But typically, compared to most people, most doctors know more than them. And that's why we go to the doctor to help us with that. So this is why if you needed help getting a coach like me, who could help you with your stories, or just getting an editor or going to a writer's group with other experienced writers is really important, because they are readers and they can help you understand and diagnose issues that arise during your process of writing. But if you are writing primarily from a place of validation, which comes from a sense of insecurity, you are not going to finish that book. And that's going to constantly come up again and again and again, because you're always coming from this place of, I want people to tell me how great it is, and you're not actually writing a book. And if you're writing a book for validation, you're like, I'm just doing it for a vanity project, I don't care what other people think. That's fantastic. That's fine. More power to you. But just know that if you're doing it for validation, don't go looking for a bead pack, and don't try to make the best book you can write, because that's not why you're writing it. So the second reason that a lot of people write it is for dollar signs. They're trying to make money, or they're trying to make a career out of writing. Obviously, if you're doing this, the demands for this are quite a bit different. This is where feedback and taking the best course are essential. So if we're writing primarily for validation, but we're unwilling to take, but we're trying to make a money and a career out of this, those oftentimes will come out ahead, because learning how to become a better writer is not a very validating experience until you're very good at it. But while you're going through the process of learning, you're going to suck. And like every success, it starts with suck right here at the beginning, right here. Every success starts with suck. And you are going to suck when you start writing, especially if you haven't done it before. So your first few drafts, most writers that I know who started publishing, their first few completed works were not very good, because they had to learn how to do that. So you have to be okay going through this process of sucking. You have to be okay just being bad. And while you're okay with being bad, you also have to be okay with learning the business of writing. So if you're saying to yourself, well, I'm writing, but I'm not interested in learning the business or trying to understand that, then recognize that this motivation, this is going to be very difficult for you, right? It's going to be nigh impossible, especially now with the way the publishing industry has been upended. So you have to ask yourself, what do I really want to do here? Because if you're trying to make money, you're trying to make a career, then you have to be okay learning business aspects of it. If you're like, I don't want to learn business, but you want to make money, you are basically saying, I want to marry a pretty girl that I love and care about, but I don't actually want to talk to her or get to know with her or generally put any effort into it. It doesn't work. You have a desire that doesn't match your willingness. And so you have to ask yourself these questions before you embark on this journey. And the last one that's really important, and this one's a little larger, is our sense of identity. So when I work with clients, one of the biggest issues that I see again and again is the general sense of identity. A lot of times they'll feel like they're imposters or that they are not a writer. But the reality is that if you write and you have the intentions to write professionally, you're a professional writer. All you have to do is make money. And with the intention, you can be a professional writer in training. So if you move with the intention to do something, you're doing it in training. When you go to school to become a doctor, you haven't made money being a doctor, but you're in med school. And so you need to ask yourself, am I in training to be a professional writer? If you're not, look down in the link below, set a time with me, and we can set a completely free strategy session on how you can set up a pathway for yourself to start traditionally and working on your own training. Because the reality is that if you want to make a career out of this, you need to start training. But if you're saying like, I just want to write a book, I don't care, then you don't need to worry about this identity, right? Because the identity of being someone who writes a book versus the identity of an author, those are two very different things. And so do you just want to write a book, or do you want to be an author? And then you have to ask yourself in approaching this, what is my actual final intent? Because sometimes you just want to write a book. And once again, that's okay. If you just want to write a book and have people tell you how great it is or not tell you, that's fine. But recognize if you want to be an author, that's a completely different can of worms. And so you have to ask yourself, what it is I'm trying to do here. Why am I doing this? Again and again and again. And ask yourself, why am I doing this? And how does validation come into that? Why am I doing this? And is there a career and money that comes into that? Why am I doing this? And how does this going to affect my identity? Now, you don't necessarily need to deep dive and focus too much on this, but these need to be pretty quick answers that you answered for yourself. And you're like, well, I want to be a professional writer. I'm ready to doing this. Okay, then. Now from now on, if you don't want to be a professional writer, you can get off this video. You don't need it. You don't need this anymore. Go write your vanity project. I hope you enjoy it. Now, if you're interested in actually being a writer, I'm going to tell you about the number one most important fuel or thing you need to be mindful of as you are working through your first project and your projects to come. Because this number one habit, this process, will be the difference between finishing projects again and again and again and making actual progress versus being stuck on that same book for 7 years. And man, I see people all the time. There's my very first writers group that I was in over 7 years ago. No, it was like 10 years ago now, right? Since then, I hadn't completed a book by now. So now I've done 8. And that first writers group, there's guys who are working on books for like 8 years and they're still working on those books because they got stuck in this rut. And this is the number one solution, right? So if you're writing for validation identity, you've asked yourself these questions and you decided, I want to be a professional writer. One thing is you really need to work through your insecurity. The number one thing you need to find is joy. And you might be like, what do you mean? That's so simple. Of course I enjoy it. But I mean, seriously think about, how do I help myself enjoy this process? And this is what I'm saying. You'll know you're enjoying this process when, first off, you would do it for free and you don't need anything else. It means you enjoy that process of feedback. You enjoy the process of improving. And you also enjoy learning the business. It also means you're willing to invest. Because if you're not willing to learn, you're not willing to get feedback, and you're not willing to invest. So invest means time, money, and energy. That's when you know you're tapping into your joy, because that's something that really drives you. Because if you're coming from this strictly competitive, ambitious space, it's not like business or sales. It's not writing, because it's naturally very creative, even when you're going nonfiction, because there's so much research, there's so much work you have to do, that you have to genuinely enjoy this process. And without enjoyment, because of how competitive and all the forces that work against us in the modern day, because you are competing with social media, you're competing with the internet, you're competing with Netflix. As a writer, you have to genuinely enjoy the process of building your career. And that means like as a hobby, you would invest in it. And you have to be able to invest in it and see it as that. And that's when it will become a return for you. So it's really learning how to shift your mindset and understanding that. If you guys want more advice for that, again, look down the link below. I'm taking sessions, as well as just put down in the comments a way you guys feel that you really can enjoy writing more. And ask yourself, is it about writing with music? Is it about writing the subjects you enjoy? What are the aspects about writing that specifically you enjoy? That's what I'm interested in hearing. Because when you know what those are, you can then continually build upon those and insert them into your process, because that's what's going to make your career viable, and that's what's going to get you over the hump. And that's what's going to get people to attract with you and build with you as you move forward. So I also wanted to touch a little bit on, after we step into joy, really taking in this aspect of faith in ourselves, as well as the idea of the connections we create along the way. I'm going to go deeper into these on other videos, but recognize that as we're really enjoying this process, our sense of belief and our connections will grow. But again, we have to be mindful of what it is we are trying to do, because it's very easy to step into this place of joy and thinking, oh, we're really working and enjoying the writing process, when more often than not, a lot of people write because they want the community with writing. But then this community with writing, especially if you get stuck with the wrong level of writers, you're never going to advance, because a lot of it, that was like with my old writers group. Eventually, in order to become professional, work for coaching, as well as to sell my own books and make money off of them, I had to leave those connections behind. And that only comes when you actually enjoy the process of writing and not the things that writing gives you. So you have to understand, do I enjoy writing itself, or do I enjoy the things writing gives me? And through that understanding, you'll know what exactly it is I'm trying to do. And those are the questions you need to ask yourself before stepping in and writing your book. Because if you do that, your book is always going to work for you. But if you don't, more and more as you write the project and you don't, it's just going to feel like a burden on your back, because you started something that you didn't intend to finish. And then eventually you're going to have this graveyard of novels that you wish you had finished that you didn't, because you never learned how to finish, because you're not really tapped into your core motivation. Anyway, I can talk forever about that, but hope all is well. Like and subscribe, leave a comment down below, and I'm interested in what you guys think. So thanks again. Stay happy, stay healthy. Peace.